you're monitoring if there are any comments or etc. regarding the audio, etc. Okay, so I'm Torvald Mårtensson. I'm with Saab, but also in Christian's group at Linköping University. I'm reporting for this study within Project 6, which includes myself, Daniel Ståhl, who's at Ericsson, and also Kristian Sandahl. And the title of the presentation is then, of course, Good Testers in Industry and in Published Literature, Mind the Gap. And we're looking into here is there such a thing as an ideal tester? And the problem that we've seen is that if you work with a large scale and complex software system, which I dare to say are all the products that we develop within Software Center, testing of those systems span from testing your software module to different types of testing of the complete product. So it's quite a range of test techniques and types of testing. Even so, if you look into books or other publications and ask for how should then the tester be, or the engineers working with testing, it's pretty much a description of the tester as a single role. And there are also many things that this person should be able to do or know, which we believe are quite impossible to combine in one person. And one example is this book, quite good book on testing computer software, summarizing this as, in sum, the ideal tester is a bright, articulate, attentive to detail, but able to appreciate the larger picture, assertive without being obnoxious, creative, and possessed of a blend of management and technical skills. And to me, that sounds like that's quite a lot to live up to, at least to me. So what we're trying to do here is to suggest a more feasible approach. And instead of looking for this quest for this perfect all-round tester, instead of chasing like a unicorn in a fairy tale, something like doesn't exist, instead we think that we should look for more complementing profiles for engineers than working with testing, which is then more feasible for practitioners in industry, something that we actually can achieve. So what we've done here this autumn, and will continue the upcoming spring, is this study that is in 6 steps. But to start with, we've done this multivocal literature review. Please come in. We have also talked to professors at 6 universities and asked them, how do you teach testing? How do you describe the characteristics of a good engineer working with testing? And then we've done this, to me at least, quite large in a series of interviews with 60 individuals at 3 companies, and that is Access Communications, Saab, and Volvo Cars. And based on these 3 inputs, we'll then move on to construct a model of what we believe can be then knowledge, skills, and personality for engineers working with testing. And then we'll move on this upcoming spring with external validation of that model with 3 other companies, Volvo Trucks, Ericsson, and Grundfos. And of course, similar to the setup of our other studies, we'll have this cross-company workshop with all participating companies. So what I would like to share today is talk about the results from this literature review and compare them to the results from this series of interviews. So what we did is that we searched on Scopus, which I dare to say is the perhaps most used search engine for academic publications. And we searched for abstract on knowledge and skills and software and testing or tester, and the keyword software testing to be in the right domain. We also did this general search on Google, where we searched for knowledge and skills testing. Then we had 187 million hits, so we didn't look into them all. So instead we looked into the top 20 most relevant hits as recommended by Google. And finally, we want to look into books, published books on testing. And what we did is that we did a Google search on book and testing and software. And the top 2 results were websites recommending these are the best books on testing. So we took the books that were on both those lists, which were then 6 books, and looked into them as we consider this to be some kind of relevant description of most recommended books on testing. So first part then, Google search on academic publications. What did we found then based on the search string that we had? We found both a group of papers that were discussing teaching of testing. How do you in the best way describe a syllabus or something, a course, how to teach testing? And another group that were perhaps a bit more interesting based on our purpose here with the search was then papers providing a list of knowledge and skills. What do a good tester need to know? And these papers, with 3 examples here, were typically then papers that had quite a long and extensive list. For example, this first example, 35 skills sorted into 7, I think it was 7 categories. And typically the structure where you sorted all these things that the tester should need to know or be able to do were that you relate them to an established structure, such as the ISTQB syllabus or knowledge areas in the software engineering book of knowledge. But generally quite extensive lists. This is all of this you must know as a tester, but no distinction between this is for if you test a software module or do performance testing, etc. This is for the tester. So if we look into the results, if we did this general search in Google, then what we found is that the websites that we found were then for organizations providing like courses, tutorials, Q&As, etc., typically describing themselves as helping the testing community. Could be like softwaretestinghelp.com or something like that. 15 of these top 20 most relevant hits as recommended by Google had this a list of that we could consider like knowledge, skills, etc., relevant for testing. Typically described as 18 software tester skills. So 15 of the 20. We sorted what these lists were describing, and you can see that if we look into these 15 sources, there's quite a wide range of things that you should include. Yeah, a question? Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Two questions.
Yeah.
So if you have considered, for example, the software engineering book of knowledge, the book.
Yeah.
And if you have considered the standards, like for example, the standard for software development in Rail as a series of skills that are expected for testers, and I think that could be an interesting.
Yeah, sure. Source. Yeah, absolutely. There are lots of things. Well, we consider we try to find different sources. So we didn't look into specifically these two, but of course there are many relevant sources. Yeah.
How your multi-vocal
just to go back here, what we did, we searched on Scopus for academic publications. Yeah.
Only academic publications.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah, Scopus is a search engine. Perhaps we can talk later because I think we have limited time. But Scopus is a search engine for academic publications. So when you said looked only for, well, that's what you get. But we can talk later if that's okay. Yeah. So if you go back. Here we're on Google search and general search on the internet, what the top most recommended sources. We can't help what that is. That's Google's recommendation. What we found is then a wide range of skills, knowledge, etc. What was quite interesting, I think, is that many of the things that were emphasized, the most text described, are then the social skills. You should be a good communicator, you should be generally a nice person, being able to work with others, etc. So there were a lot of text, a lot of emphasized things related to the soft skills. We can also see that based on the examples, they were very much related to like web construction of web pages, mobile or desktop applications. So as it seems, these websites, typically like Software Testing Help, they were more focused on that kind of development of that kind of applications. So what we found in this general search, the top most recommended sites found as most relevant by Google, then are quite extensive lists, not so much sorted into categories of testing, etc. focus on soft skills and, as it seems, based on examples, more into this mobile applications, etc. Yeah. So last group, related published books. Then it's a bit more tricky to summarize in some kind of table because they're quite different. So let's go through them one by one. First book, this book, Software Testing by Jorgensen. He relates tester and to a craftsperson, like a blacksmith, and then describes this as the mastery of the tools, mastery of, yeah, etc. Pattern, another book also called Software Testing. There's more like a list here. It should be explorer, troubleshooter, relentless. So it's more about personality, how you should be as a person. Myers, The Art of Software Testing, perhaps by some people considered the first book that recognizes software testing as a known discipline, has actually, at least to me, not a description of how should the person working with testing, who should that be, but emphasizes a lot the importance of the independent tester, saying a programmer should avoid attempting to test his or her own program. So that's the focus of how you describe the tester in that book. Fuster and Graham. And then we're back to, sorry, they had this book on test automation. So here actually is someone distinguishing between two different roles within testing, saying that one thing is the person knowing, being the tester. Another role is the test automator who knows how to build and maintain the testware. So they are actually two roles, but that's the first. Copeland, then we're back to this kind of list of things you should be able to do: create a mental model, care for observer, skilled test designer, etc. But this is only relevant to what Copeland called exploratory testers. If you're into scripted testing, according to Copeland's description, then you don't need any knowledge about testing. You don't need domain knowledge, knowledge about the system, because you're only executing scripts, which I think it's, well, quite interesting, but I don't really agree. Finally, this book, Crispin and Gregory, Agile Testing, puts the tester within an agile context, of course. And then we're back to this quite long list, focusing on how you should be as a person, embrace change, collaborate well, etc. And Crispin and Gregory also discuss the importance of having this independent test organization. So that's also important there. So quite a wide range of how the tester, the engineers working with testing, but not so much about different, just a minute, different types of testers or characteristics for different types of testing. Yeah, a question.
The age of these books?
Sorry?
The age of these books?
Well, I don't actually remember, but they're not last year, but not ancient, so quite modern, but still considered by, if you search now, these are the books that, according to what we found, are most relevant. So, yeah. So, but we can look into that later if you're interested. Okay, so before going into comparing these results with literature review with then what we actually found from this series of interviews with 60 practitioners, what are your expectations from that we heard then from the academic publications, the general search in Google, these websites, and also these books? What are your expectations? What do you think are the differences if we compare that to interviews with practitioners? Nothing? Or just the same? Sorry, what were your... they were describing more that you should be hardworking. Yeah. The tester should be hardworking. Yeah. Yeah? Anything else? Yeah?
What's the difference in the list from any other engineering?
They should be good engineers, generally.
I mean, they also grades you had there. I mean,
yeah.
I guess they are applicable to many other roles.
Yeah. Is that a good description? Would you say that if you're a good engineer, or are you a good tester? If you're good at programming, or you're good at testing? What do you think? Because I think it's a good point. I think a good programmer is probably a good tester, but is that the only thing that we're looking for? Any other thoughts? Yeah.
Depends on how you define roles is tricky thing.
Exactly. Okay, so what we're looking for here, an engineer, someone who does testing. And testing is, yeah.
A software engineer is a role as well.
Perhaps, yeah. Okay. So what we asked is an engineer working with testing. We asked, what knowledge, skills, and personality do we want from that person? Yeah. Any expectations? Okay. So 3 things I'd like to share with you. And then, of course, we'll move on to the study. We'll construct this model, and we'll come back in half a year and report more detailed report on the interviews. But 3 things, focusing today on comparing sources in literature with what did the practitioners say in industry. The first thing is that there is no such thing as an ideal tester. Several of the interviewees started when we asked them, what would you say are for a good engineer who works with testing? What are we looking for? And many of them started with saying, well, hey, that depends. Are we into testing a module, performance testing, testing complete system, user testing? What do you mean? So several of the interviewees started with discussing this. Others who didn't also came into, well, if you're into that type, but if you're more into, so someone need to focus on that, but that's probably someone else that's good at how to act as a user. That's not the same person as, etc. So there's quite a lot of the interviewees in different ways, and some very specifically started with saying that there is no such thing as an ideal tester, which is interesting, since if we look into literature, there's not so much discussion about this. So as it seems, we're into something that seems to be interesting for industry. Second thing is that I think that this independent tester has been a lot of discussion about that in different ways. And if you look into some of the books, not all, but some of the books and also some publications, this is really important to have this independent tester. And please wait. An independent tester and also this independent test organization. And I think the practitioners didn't say that this is wrong, but they described a more balanced approach with pros and cons. If you're more informed, then you can do better testing, but also as this, the whole idea about this, if you did the coding yourself, you probably will miss out some perspectives. But it's more like a balanced approach that the interviewees describe, which I think is not what is described in some of the publications. And finally, soft skills were described as very important by especially these websites, this software testing help, etc. But and this was also considered as relevant and interesting by the practitioners, but not as interesting as described by those websites and also by some of the academic publications. Okay, so before moving into questions, I think we have limited time left. I'll just say a few words on next step. So we're done with this literature review. We'll talk to the professors. We talk to 60 practitioners. So we're now into constructing this model, finalizing that work. We will move on to these companies, Volvo Cars, Ericsson, and Grundfos. And that will be then that we want to share an actionable model, something that can actually help companies say, look into the individuals they had working with testing. Do you have the right people? How do you develop that group of people, etc.? So we want something actionable and relevant. And then based on the validation, we'll have this later this spring. We'll have this cross-company workshop. We'll all participating companies and also the new universities that are part of the study. So that would be the next step. Okay, and with that, I think at least we'll have some minutes for questions. I think you raised your hand.